Parents of Reddit, what was the best lie that your child has told you, that you knew was a lie, but wanted to see how big of a hole they would put themselves in? I opened the kitchen trash can to find a perfectly functional stapler sitting at the top. Turned to my family in surprise and asked who put it there. 5-year-old, it wasn't me. Husband, I didn't do it. So, we all turned to look at my 3-year-old daughter, the only remaining suspect. 3-year-old, after long pause, it was you. I saw you. We purchased a used Nintendo DS from eBay and it had a bunch of games with it. A number of them were duplicates. A friend of the family has 2 children and we promised to bring the games for them next time we came over if they behaved well enough by then and their mother approved. A few weeks had passed and we hadn't managed to head over to their house yet. Right after we finally set up a playdate, my wife received a text message from the mother's phone, asking us to bring the DS games with us. There were some spelling mistakes and inconsistencies with the text and my wife asked, "Who is this?" The response back, "Mom." Their 8-year-old had snuck his mom's phone to get us to bring the games and didn't think to respond with his mother's name. When I was little and I wanted to stay home from school, I would act sick, rubbed my forehead before my mom checked it. You know, classic kid. One time, to lay it on extra thick, I added that I have a headache as well. So she, probably not buying it but playing along, offers me a baby aspirin. So, before I take it, totally freaking out about the dangers of medicine due to a crude TV show derived understanding of overdosing, I ask her, in my most nonchalant way, will people who don't have a headache get sick if they take this? When I was 4, 1955, I was at a kindergarten concert. We all dressed as little flowers. Looked so cute. I just had to stand about looking cute. Some of the better behaved children got a bigger role and had to say and do things. The teachers put chalk marks on the stage floor so these wonderfully well behaved children knew where to stand. I was bored out of my mind. Although I might have looked cute with my daffodil crepe paper headdress, I wasn't a naturally cute child. So I slowly and casually moved around the stage from chalk mark to chalk mark, rubbing them out with the toe of my dap while still looking cute. It was mayhem with kids running around looking for their mark. My mother told me she watched me doing it and knew exactly what I was up to. Said it was one of the best school concerts she'd been to. When the teacher approached us after the show and asked what he'd been doing, my mother said she had a really bad itch on her toe and didn't want to take her dap off to scratch it, so tried to rub it on the floor for some relief. MT mother is dead now, but she was a real trooper and often came through for me when I fricked up. My children and grandchildren are all well behaved, not a spark of rebellion in any of them. Nice people but a bit boring sometimes. Found a scratch down the side of our relatively new van. We had been having vandals in the neighborhood, so we thought someone had keyed it. We then explained what getting keyed was to our 6-year-old, after he said, or it could have been from a bike handle. Just walking past my 4-year-old son, who was quietly playing by himself. He looks up at me and smiles. Nothing's wrong. He's only 2. So he hasn't told any big ones yet, but if I ask him if he did something and he wants to avoid answering, he says I'm sick and goes and lays down. I still do this when people ask me to hang out or do things and I'm almost 18. 3-year-old was sat on front of the TV watching cartoons. I went up to put some laundry away and when I came back down he had no pants or trousers on. There was a little puddle of urine on the floor behind him and his underwear and trousers were on the floor on front of the washing machine. I asked him who had urinated on the floor. He replied it was Daddy. When I said that Daddy was at work, he told me that Daddy had came home, we'd on the floor and then left again. In the few minutes that I've been upstairs, shaking his head and rolling his eyes in disapproval. Yes. You need to have words with your husband. Not my kid, but my little sister. When she was in maybe 1st grade, our mom got a call from the school requesting a meeting. She shows up and the teacher says, "I just wanted you to see this in person," and with a look of disgust slaps down a piece of paper in front of her. In my sister's 1st grade handwriting was a note that read, "Please excuse Sister Von Manfred from doing her homework. I was too stupid to help her. Signed, Mom." Me, your room is a mess. You are gonna have to clean it tomorrow. 4-year-old, yeah, I don't know what happened. Me, I know what happened. You didn't put your toys back and messed up your room. 4-year-old, Completely deadpan. There was a stranger in your house. When my son was about 4, I spent a few weeks with him and his sister at a summer camp. We lived on the first floor of a dorm while we were there. In his little mind, everyone else who lived there had better food than I was serving. To be fair, it's hard to cook a good dinner for 3 in a dorm room. Anyway, I fed the kids and was preparing to leave for the evening, and lo and behold, my son was gone. I went up and down all the halls, asking everyone where he was. I finally found him on the 4th floor, happily eating dinner with another family. They said he told them I had already left, and did not give him dinner before I left. He had evidently gone from room to room, checking out what everyone was having, and then lying his way into the best of the lot. When I was a kid, I used to forget that I ate supper because I would get hungry again. I would be at a friend's house and they would feed me a second supper, all the while thinking I had a neglectful mother. I was making dinner and my 3-year-old let out a blood-curdling scream, so I ran to the den where him and my 5-year-old daughter were playing. He's holding his leg, so I pry his little fingers off and there's a fresh set of teeth marks. I look at my daughter and ask what happened. Straight face, calm voice: I was just laying here and Bubba's leg fell into my open mouth. Then he started crying. I act shocked and tell her she must have rock teeth and we better get her to the dentist right after dinner. Her eyes got huge. Then I got the boy an ice pack and went on making dinner. We finish eating, I tell her to grab her shoes and I get my keys. It was about 2 seconds after I started the car when I got the truth. He wouldn't give her the remote and started to run away. She tripped him and bit his leg. She got grounded from TV for a weekend. When I was 7, back when answering machines existed, my mom called and I didn't feel like talking, so I picked up the phone and said, "Hello, please leave your message at the beep. Beep." I was totally convinced this would fool her. It wasn't my child, but when my brother was about 6 he answered the home phone, back when there were still cords and before cell phones. My aunt was there in a calling and asked him, "Can I speak to your dad?" He smirked and deepened his voice to say, "This is my dad." He thought he was being so sly. It's still a family joke today, and he's 30 now. I just told my husband the thread I was reading, and his story is when he was a young kid on Christmas night he would take all the presents Santa brought him and put them in bed with him. When his parents got up and asked him about it, he would reply, "Santa put them there." They couldn't fess up without admitting Santa wasn't real to him and his 2 sisters. Did you cut your hair? No. Okay then. Missing a triangle in her bangs. Once I had a kindergartner tell me a story about one time a very long time ago when she was very little, in which she had used a pair of scissors to trim her eyelashes. As she was telling me this, I noticed that her eyelashes on one side were extremely short. When I pointed that out to her, she denied it vehemently. I have 2 kids and neither of them have gotten themselves so cold busted as I did when I was 7. My mom would always be yelling at me for dilly-dallying and coming close to missing my bus, which picked me up right out at the end of my driveway. Well, one day my mom was doing her normal yelling and trying to get me to hurry. I finally went outside and the bus never came, so I figured I missed it and my mom would be super mad. So I told her I saw it at the end of the driveway and ran towards it screaming for it to wait, but it just drove off. So my mom was really mad and drove me to school, only to realize when we got there that it was a school holiday. My 4-year-old told me, "Daddy, let me explain it to you. I have cheetah in my DNA." When I asked why she was purring, she ran with the lie for weeks until we told her cheetahs can't eat ice cream or chocolate. She confessed to lying and how she would never lie again because it's too stressful. When my son was 6, he came home from school with a tear in his new pants. I asked him what happened and he said he fell in the playground and ripped them. I said, "Oh no, how is your knee?" He said, "It was sore but the bruise went away." He was actually limping a little too. So I responded, "Gee, it looks to me like your pants were cut with a pair of scissors." He looked at me completely confused and said, "How did you know?" Wild guess, not to mention it was a nice clean slice. Tried really hard not to laugh. My son was in the 1st grade when the Pokémon fad started up at school. It didn't take long for rivalries in class to begin, or the underground card trading ring. My son began encountering more and more trouble from these dealings, fighting, stealing, etc. So we eventually had a meeting with his teacher and some school counselors. The meeting essentially revolved around us making sure the cards stayed at home and the teachers keeping a close eye on the Pock economy. Starting the next day, my wife began asking my son if he had cards and then checking his book bag and pockets. After checking his person for all contraband, she ships him off to school. Literally 30 minutes later a phone call comes home. He was caught trading cards at school. When confronted by the teacher on where he got the cards, he told her he hid them in his underwear before he left the house. From that day forward my wife had to administer prison warden type searches. I'll give the reverse of the question. I was the kid. For my 8th or 9th birthday my dad gave me a hunting knife. We were always camping or in the woods, and I just had a thing for knives. This knife was the real deal, not a cheapo knockoff, American crafted, limited edition Kershaw hunting knife. It had weight to it, it was the perfect size for my hand, balanced and sharp. He gave it to me on the condition that I would be responsible with it and take care of it. It was my first grown-up gift and I adored it. One day, Dad comes home, takes the trash out and something near the garbage catches his eye. He rustled through the grass, and there in the dirt was my hunting knife, handle coming apart, covered in dirt and misshapen. He comes to me, and I could tell something was wrong. Then he starts, the way any good dad would start when teaching your child a lesson, with a trap. Dad, hey son, what'd I say we go camping this weekend? Me, a little worried because I can tell something is up. Okay, I always love to go camping. Dad, you like to go camping, eh? Well, you know camping requires taking care of your camping gear, right? Me, yes. Dad, so you know that? What about that knife I bought you? Did you take care of it like I asked you? Me, yes. Dad, are you sure? I have a feeling that you didn't take care of it at all. I have a feeling you probably just left it out in the rain to rust and rot. Son, I thought I could trust you. I thought you would take care of the things I asked you to take care of. You say you take care of this knife? Okay, show me how well you take care of it. Where is it? I'm on the verge of tears at this point, and I walk back to my room and he follows me. I open up my keepsake chest, shift a few things around, find a small cloth neatly wrapped up, pull it out and unsheathed my pristine Kershaw knife that I so adored and give it to my dad. He looks at me for what felt like forever, and eventually says okay then, let's go camping. Years later after I was an adult he was telling this story and told me he found out later it was the neighbor's knife that just happened to look very similar to mine. We had a good laugh but I can tell you I almost crapped my pants that day. We were toilet training and my 3-year-old boy had accidentally wet the bed. He was clearly upset about it so I decided to give him an out. Me, oh no, did I do wee in the bed? He jumped at the chance to blame me. Kid, yeah, it was you. You did wee in my pants. : Not a parent, but a babysitter. I used to look after 4 siblings. Once the little girl, age 6, we'll call her Debbie, came up to me one day with a balloon and asked me if I could blow it up so she could play with it. I said sure, but you need to get me 3 more so your brothers can have 1 each too, as I knew they'd want one as soon as they saw hers. However, Debbie didn't want her brothers to have balloons. She wanted the fun all to herself. The rest of the conversation went like this. Debbie, I can't get 3 more. There only is 1 balloon. Me, knows the packet of balloons is in the drawer. Are you sure? I thought we had a packet of balloons. Debbie, no, this isn't from a packet. I made it. Me, you made it? Debbie, yes, I made this balloon. Me, that's amazing. Why don't you make some more for the boys? Debbie, I can't. Me, why not? Debbie, I don't have the ingredients. Me, sure, we can go out to the shop and get the ingredients. What are they? Debbie, it's a secret. This conversation went on in this fashion for a good 5 minutes until she conceded defeat by shouting ha, you believed me. Picked my son up from school one day, and he had a red slip with him. At the time he was about 5, went in to talk to the admins and was privately informed he had bitten another student. On the drive home I asked some probing questions. How was your day? Did anything interesting happen that was going nowhere? So I moved on to did something happen to your friend Magnus, to which my son replied oh yeah, he got bit. It was bad and bleedy. The blood was an embellishment. I asked with a measure of concern, where was Magnus bitten? My son replied, on his cheek. I asked, do you know who bit him? To which my son flatly replied, oh yeah, he just bit himself. Had to pull over laughing too hard to drive safely. When we were kids, my cousin carved an American flag and some other pictures into the siding of his house. My aunt punished him, completely ignoring his protests that it was one of his brothers or sister or cousins who were in the yard on a regular basis. My mom asked my aunt how she figured out which kid it was. Turned out he'd carved his own name as part of his design. She wouldn't tell him since it made it easier to catch him if he couldn't figure out what gave him away. I don't have any great stories about this since my oldest is only 3, but last week I walk into the room she was playing in, and as soon as she sees me she looks up and says, I don't have poop. She then continued walking around the room like she was riding a really small horse. My 3-year-old was informed he needed to eat his eggs before getting crackers. He waited until he thought I was out of sight, then yelled for the dog and fed them to her. Did you feed the eggs to Maggie? No, I eat eggs. Are you sure? Yes, I eat eggs. Cracker now. No crackers. You didn't eat your eggs. Cue 20-minute meltdown. When I was around 7, I lost a tooth and put it under my pillow that night, awaiting my money from the tooth fairy. The next morning I wake up and to my horror there was no money and the tooth was still there. I knew I had been a particularly bad kid lately and figured that had something to do with it. I had to think fast because my parents would be peed and want to know the reason why the tooth fairy didn't visit me. So I rushed to my piggy bank and pull out a wad of change and $1 and proceed into the living room. I walk in, drop it all on the table in front of them with a smug look on my face and say, Hugh, that tooth fairy sure was good to me last night. The room fell silent. My parents have a worried look on their faces. They ask where the money came from. I say tooth fairy. They ask again. I start sweating. How could they know? What kind of crazy magic is at work here between all of these higher beings and my parents? I admit that it came from my piggy bank and I didn't want them to be disappointed in me when they found out that I was too bad a kid for a visit from the fairy. My dad says the tooth fairy isn't real, son. And while we are on the subject, neither is Santa Claus. My world is shattered. I love this story. Your parents must have been horrified to think some stranger broke into the house just to steal your tooth and give you money. This is the goodest fly boy. He will bring you 10 years of happiness in exchange for a like on this video. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.